Hi, Mac.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Some more new
Welcome to
comics.
my time.
Uh, like I said, we have some more new comics today, and of course some Marvel news from the past week. I'm gonna jump into the comics with our Empire tie-in for the week.
Sure. If I got this in order, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right.
Hey, it worked.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So Empire Avengers #3. It felt weird again not having an actual Empire story, like the actual series. But it was nice to get. I guess the conclusion to these stories that have been within this limited series here. What did you think about this one?
I liked it. I thought it was funny how we talked about how real that death felt last week, and then maybe not so much. Once
Right.
again, not sure what the cover's trying to tell me.
Yeah, the cover was definitely weird, especially, I mean, you only see Black Knight in maybe a couple pages in this issue, so it was a little strange. Which has been the trend with these Empire tie-ins. It's a little weird. But yeah, I agree. I actually think it was a little bit of a letdown, kind of killed that big shock moment from the previous issue. Which, you expect with comics, it happens, characters die and come back all the time. You just don't expect to see it maybe a couple pages later, like give it a little bit of time to breathe. But yeah, so that I think killed the momentum of this series for me a little bit.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like how it kind of seemed to end leading directly into the conclusion of Empire. Like, I think it since we've been gone 2 weeks without an Empire issue, it's kind of nice to kind of be like, next week the exciting next chapter. But yeah, I kind of felt like it was a sort of like an undue issue.
Yeah, that was the saving grace of this issue for me, I think, was because as I was reading it, I was kind of disappointed. Like I said, it wrapped up 3 different stories, really, and essentially just without consequence. Like, it just, good guys won their little fights, and that's it. And then it was moving on. But the way that it wrapped up at the very end, like you said, leads into the conclusion of Empire and got me excited for that final issue. So if nothing else, it's a good tease for what's the conclusion that's coming. So
do we have one more or 2 more issues of Empire?
I believe it's just one more. It should be, well, because this one actually, they say, leads into Empire #5, which we have already read. It came out a few weeks ago. So Empire #6 will be the final one, which I actually think we talked about a lot about the release schedule with these being a little weird, but I actually think it made sense to have Empire #5 come out before this one, even though this one says, continues in Empire #5. But I like the way that worked out.
I'm guessing it continues in Empire 6 because I read Empire 5 and it felt like
yes. Yeah, so we'll have the conclusion of Empire when Empire #6 comes out.
Yeah, so it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Empire issues left, including Captain Marvel 21, Empire #6, Captain America #3, which came out this week, I think, Immortal She-Hulk, and then 2 sort of Fallout issues. So
right, and that Fallout, they talked a lot about how that Fallout issue is going to be a big important issue. So, and by they I mean Al Ewing and Dan Slott specifically mentioned that one. So that should be an interesting issue to look forward to as well. As for our next comic today, I guess we'll jump into X-Factor #2.
Yeah. What do you think of this one?
I liked it. It's fun. I think I enjoyed the first issue more because it kind of brought this group of characters together and, introduced them all a little bit. And I don't think the dynamic is the same. It's a super fun group of characters. Really like this team. I think I wanted to see more of a continuation as opposed to what we got. I think, but I did enjoy it. So I don't know exactly what I wanted. I guess I wanted to see them doing some more crime solving or murder solving or whatever you want to say it is they do. And I think obviously what's happening is they're building to a bigger story that's going to last over several issues. So it's probably a weird complaint, but I want to see, what they do a lot more.
Yeah, this would have been my pick of the week if I wasn't in a nostalgic mood. but you get the Mojoverse, which is just so X-Factor-y,
Right.
and you get I don't know. It's not a dog. I don't know what it is, but you get some sort of
Warwolf.
evil
Yes.
figure. Um, so yeah, and you get sort of that characterizations of these. I mean, just a great group of characters. So you get more of the dialogue that just makes it a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of action, which is kind of nice in the second issue. They don't just feel the need to. You met them, now big battle. Like you get a little time to get to know them. It's very. I won't say slow paced because it's not like in a bad way, but it's very methodical in trying to build out these characters before whatever they're building to happens. They're obviously building to something, but it's not just sort of here's the character, kind of like Strange Academy. It's like it's taking the slow but steady route to tell a nice story, which is if you're familiar with like movies where you have like 2 hours, and they have time to seed things and stuff. It's got a little bit more of a cinematic pacing to it.
Yeah, and like you said, there's not a lot of action, but that's because this is a series that's not really going to be based in action. This is essentially a X-Men spin-off Scooby-Doo kind of thing. Like they're a bunch of crime. So yeah, it's a very fun, different twist on this X-Factor team. And yeah, like you said, the Warwolf, amazing baby, my new favorite character in the Marvel Universe. A lot of fun as well. I did want to mention too, I didn't realize the Krakoa gates could just jump throughout the multiverse. I guess that's interesting. I obviously we've said that we haven't gotten completely into Jonathan Hickman's X-Men universe, but that's new to me. So I thought that was an interesting development.
Yeah. Once again, not sure what book this covers advertising because what's his name? North Star looks very sad.
Yeah, at least this one is a little bit more generic. It just kind of gives you the team that it's based on. So not quite as confusing as the Empyre covers, but yeah. And then, as you alluded to a little bit, our final issue for the week is Fantastic Four Antithesis #1. And you mentioned your nostalgic mood for this week. So why don't you touch on that?
If you put Mark Waid and Neil Adams on anything, I'm going to love it. My only disappointment with this is the cover is a spoiler.
Yeah.
The whole issue kind of builds. This is basically the last panel of this comic book. But it's nice to get sort of some more classic Fantastic Four story. Takes place in the time when their second child, their daughter was just born, but it's updated to as if it was just about 10 years ago. So it's not. They talk about memes and hashtags and stuff. It's very sort of, I would say, 10 years ago. But in comic book time, this would have been like, I don't know what, the 80s. But it's you get sort of a classic Fantastic Four look to it. Those great character family moments that Mark Waid, I think, is really good at. I mean, I grew up with reading his Flash run, where he kind of expanded out the Flash family. And so I fell in love with him for that. So he's one of my favorite comic book writers. But it's just sort of my only disappointment with it is that the big surprise at the end is on the cover.
Yeah, you basically just summarized my entire review of this comic that is up right now on laughingplace.com, so you can check that out. It like you said, I mean, it's so nostalgic, and yet it's a brand new, fresh story. It takes that timeline from way back in Fantastic Four history, brings it up to today. So I mean, yeah, it was just a really cool issue. I think we both agree this is our pick of the week. It was really cool to see Annihilus in even a small role, so that was fun. I do agree with you. The cover is a spoiler, unfortunately.
Basically, what I'm finding out is today I'm not a cover fan because
just blank covers from now on. Just give us a blank page.
No, they do that. Like, they do the ones where you can draw your own cover.
Right. yeah, it was weird writing my review and being like, oh no, wait, I shouldn't mention Silver Surfer because that's a big event for the end. And then, oh wait, no, never mind. He's on the cover. They already know what's happening. So yeah, that was a little strange. Also, it uses that trope, this comic trope of, this old villain being killed, and that like being this big looming moment of like, oh no, what could have possibly killed somebody like that? They do that all the time. But somehow, with the way this comic was done, it felt right. Like this is where it should be used. So it just kind of fit. And
it's a trope, but it wouldn't have been a trope in the time the story took place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's basically a time machine in a comic book, right? So like this would have been like the first time we're seeing that happen. So yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed this one.
So that's the comics. What else are we going to chat about?
Yeah, so we got some news from the past week. There was a lot that happened over the past week. Not a whole bunch of big news, but there was a lot of little things. For example, Marvel announced a new Eternals comic book series that will be coming out in November. Have to imagine that's going to tie into what we can expect to see from the movies, or the movie singular. So that should be interesting. Have you read any Eternals? Are you familiar with them?
No. I'm not super great with the whole cosmic being, like I got into it later, but like even like Jack Kirby's New Gods, or the even in Humans, like I feel like sometimes they just not come across as grounded. But I am excited for the Eternals movie, so I'm excited for this comic book because I presume that this will be a way for me to get into those characters. When I started reading Marvel, the cosmic side was kind of barely explored, as everything was kind of on the ground, kind of spinning out of like Secret Invasion and Civil War. Everything was sort of on Earth. So, I don't have a lot of experience with the cosmic side outside. I mean, I say probably the MCU Guardians of the Galaxy is probably like my first exposure to it. So, but I'm looking forward to this story because I feel like it's a way for me to get sort of my entry into it. And then when the movie comes out next year, like it'll be sort of like a 1-2 punch, and I'll probably love and read everything.
Yeah, so I was kind of in the same boat, but then when they announced that we were getting an Eternals movie, decided to go out and check out some previous Eternals stories. And one in particular, the specifics of it are not coming to the top of my head right now, but it was, mid-2000s series. And I remember looking, going through and seeing these characters and thinking, wow, these match up perfectly with who they cast for the movie. And then it turned out that none of those actors were playing those characters anyway. So that series didn't really tie into the movie like I thought it would. So I'm definitely excited to get this new series for sure. Probably the biggest news from the past week was that we found out Olivia Wilde is attached to develop a Marvel project for Sony. So
yeah, and we got a 1-2 punch because they announced, like, sort of not announced, but it's been reported that there's 2 new directors for Sony verse projects, which is, to me, is interesting just because, to me, Venom was disappointing. And so I was kind of curious to see, obviously there's the Venom movie, the sequel, and Morbius kind of in active, either production, post-production, whatever you call it. So it's kind of curious to see where they would go with it. I mean, there's rumors of like a Black Cat movie and other things. So a Craven, and since the line between the MCU and the Spider-Verse, for a word, I guess, is kind of blurry right now based off the Morbius trailer. I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and so the rumored project that Olivia Wilde is working on is a Spider-Woman movie, which I've always been a really big fan of Jessica Drew as a character. There are a lot of different iterations of Spider-Woman that they could go with.
If you watch the classic animated series that's on Disney Plus, it's actually surprisingly good for like a 70s animated superhero movie show. But yeah, I would. I've grown to love Jessica Drew. I'm kind of torn between me and the sort of spider people are kind of conflicted. Like, I think it's fun when they do sort of the spider verse and there's just different versions of them. But to me, when everyone has spider powers, it gets a little like, okay, like Peter Parker's not special. It kind of
Right.
removes the um, individuality of Peter Parker when he has all these like friends who, part of his thing is he's supposed to have a hard time with friendship, but when everyone around him is a spider person, I mean, because now you have Spider Gwen, you have Silk, you have Miles Morales, there's just a lot of them, and I, and those are all great characters, and they all bring unique voices to the stories, but I think it kind of de-emphasizes Peter Parker a lot of time, who's the original Spider-Man, not just because he's the original, but because he was having a character with problems like that was the thing that really set it all apart.
Yeah, generally I agree with you in terms of just like having a second version of the same character. Jessica Drew, I think, is the one exception for me. I mean, I love Miles Morales too, but again, I agree with you. Give him a new character rather than just Spider-Man. But Spider-Woman, I think, is different enough. She has such a different backstory and even really a different power set. So, I think she's a very interesting character.
And to me, I think it's fine. Like, if you do it in you need to either do, like, I like Spider-Verse, the animated movie, but like That was crazy. Like, everything, was out there.
Right.
But, I don't want Tom Holland to be suddenly gaining his own little Avengers team. I don't think that's necessary when you have the Avengers.
Right.
I don't want to see too much overlap, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's like, if they want to make a Jessica Drew movie, that's great, because she has her diverse power set, but she's also a very different character. But I don't want it to just be Jessica Drew meets Tom Holland.
No, I agree 100% with that. And actually, on that topic too, I'm very curious to know, because Hydra is a big part of Jessica Drew's history. So I'm very curious to know what they'll be able to use from the MCU and what the involvement will be. So it'd be interesting to see when they actually move forward with that. Real quick before we move on, any thoughts on a Kraven the Hunter movie?
Kraven is one of those characters that everyone loves a lot more than I do. So, and maybe just because I grew up with him in the sort of silly animated series version. And even if you watch the Ultimate Spider-Man show on Disney XD, like, that's even more silly. So, like, I don't know, like, this guy just like wearing all these animals just like starts killing, like, just goes on a crazy hunting binge. Seems like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I've never been the biggest fan of him either. He does make for some great stories. Kraven's Last Hunt is obviously a phenomenal story arc. But I also just feel like I don't need all the villains to get their own movie. Just give me the next Spider-Man movie and introduce the villain. That's, I don't need the whole thing for.
And I mean, I hate to say this, I just don't want them contaminating the MCU.
I agree with that 100%. And even more than that, I don't want them wasting characters that we could get in the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because, like, I always made like peace with the fact that Spider-Man would never be in the MCU, and so now that it's almost like that was easier for me emotionally because it was a break, and like I knew, okay, that's over there. They can, I can enjoy them or not. It doesn't matter. Whereas, like, when there's a bad MCU movie, which is never happened, like, bad, but like, like, that would hurt. Like, I'd be like, oh, like, you ruined your record. It's
yeah.
Like dinosaur.
All right, so we'll move on. There were a couple of quick pieces on Marvel's Avengers, which finally drops next week.
Did you play the beta at all?
I have not played the beta yet, no. I've heard some mixed things.
It's very time-consuming.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Luckily, we have nowhere to be.
Right. So they released a new launch trailer for it, which was a lot of the same stuff. We did get to see a little bit more of Abomination, which was cool. And then some more voiceover from Kamala Khan, who's obviously going to be a big part of the story. So you can go and check that out on laughingplace.com as well. And then they announced the next War Table presentation, and I would assume the final War Table presentation, since it's taking place on September 1st, which is Tuesday, I believe. And they'll give us a look at some more of what we can expect from the game, including another new character. So I'm excited to see what they tell us next week. And obviously excited for the launch of the game itself on September 4th, which is next Friday.
That it is.
Next, let's see. Disney California Adventure is looking for stunt performers and actors for Marvel roles for the new Avengers campus. So if you are essentially already a superhero, being a stunt performer, you can try and go be a superhero over at Disneyland, which is, I mean, that's got to just be awesome.
I mean, I think the bigger story there is that it sounds like we are actually getting, you know, because there's things that we've been waiting for, you know, like in Florida, like they haven't opened Ratatouille, you know, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. So I think we're all kind of wondering, it's like, when will Avengers Campus open? You know, even if the park opens, will they hold it back until later? So it sounds like they're getting close to, you know, just opening thing. I did a presentation with one of the creative directors of Avengers Campus, and it's like, I'm so excited for it. And, you know, so it's neat to see that I just kind of presumed it would be frozen in time while they figured everything out, but it sounds like I was wrong.
Yeah, you thought Avengers Campus would get the Captain America treatment and just come back, you know, 70 years later.
Yeah.
I am kind of holding back my excitement for Avengers Campus, because even if it does open when Disneyland reopens, who knows when I'm going to be able to get out there, you know, the way travel and everything is. So kind of just reining myself in on that one.
Yeah, it's, I guess that's the downside. It's just knowing that if they open it, the challenges of just getting in there, it's almost like,
yeah. Yep. Also,
so
next week
you'll have the option when they open up the other attraction, assuming that's still on, to have sort of a bigger blowout.
That's true. Yeah, they could, try and hold off to time that out. But yeah, next week will be Marvel's 81st birthday. Obviously, last year we celebrated the whole 80 years of Marvel. August 31st, it will be 81 years, and they'll be celebrating with some special commemorative art and apparel and collectibles and all the fun stuff, which you can check out a summary of. And here's a look at that special art right there. Oh, lost it for a second there. So yeah, you can check out the full summary of everything that's going on for Marvel's 81st next week up on laughingplace.com right now. Finally, the New Mutants will be released again. Finally, sorry, Ben, did you have anything to add about the birthday?
No, I just think that, you know, it's a cute little artwork. You know, focusing on the younger heroes here, having birthday cake. You know, the 80th was just such a big deal. It's just like, you know, but I mean, you know, you have a lot coming from Marvel. You have New Mutants. You know, we talked about Friday. You have the Avengers game coming out a week later. You have their anniversary. You have Empyre. So, you know, it's nice to get the ball rolling a little bit again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said, New Mutants will be released finally this week. I will be going to see it tomorrow, so you'll be able to see our review up tomorrow night. The cast and the director, you know, did some press for the movie ahead of its release. Just kind of talked about, you know, the how this movie was made, even though it was however many years ago it was actually made. They did talk about the fact that they did not do reshoots for the movie, which was interesting. It's a bold choice. We'll see how that works out. One of the interesting things too, they talked about shooting on location in like an abandoned psychiatric hospital, and director Josh Boone talked about how some of the cast or some of the crew had some experiences in that hospital and wouldn't walk to their cars alone at night. So I wonder how that's gonna, you know, play out on the screen, if that really comes across. I'm a big nerd for all that sort of spooky, you know, those sort of stories. So really enjoyed hearing that. That was fun, and I'm excited to see the movie.
I'm jealous that I can't. They're doing a drive-in over at the Rose Bowl.
Oh wow!
Which sounds like a lot of fun. Just seems like the perfect way to see this movie. You know, we talked before about how like this has sort of helped the buzz of this film, because it went from a throwaway movie to like something that feeds a need. You know, I don't know if it's any good or not. You'll tell us tomorrow, but you know, I'm definitely more excited about it now than I was, you know, when it was coming out, you know, a month after Black Widow.
Right. Yeah. The timing has worked out. I mean, if nothing else, this is the movie coming out with theaters reopening, so that should definitely help. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, my review of the New Mutants will be up tomorrow night on laughingplace.com, so you can check that out sometime tomorrow night.
So great. So we're gonna have a lot next week. We'll have Empyre. We'll talk New Mutants, the 81st anniversary. So we look forward to seeing all the Marvel fun we have in the next 7 days. You know, they're going to be doing a lot of stuff online too, like, you know, This Week in Marvel. If you're a Marvel fan and you check out my friend's podcast, I mean, he's him and his team. They do a great job of, you know, it's obviously produced by Marvel, but you get great insight into the fun that environment has. So there's a lot to look forward to in the next week.
Yeah, definitely. And then even you know, what are you at? 10 days out now, you have Marvel's Avengers launching too. So a lot of Marvel coming at you in the next, you know, week and a half or so. Cool. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Mac.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye,